here we go. 2024. The year of go get 'em, huh? Hey, y'all, welcome to this episode of Black Beat Podcast. My name is John Washington, and I'm your host. And today is exciting as it is one of our first podcasts of the year. You know, very rarely do I get her to sit at the table with me, my co-producer. But today, for some odd reason, she's chose to sit at the table with this exciting episode that we have coming at you today. But today, I'd like to let y'all know that Miss Fawn Aberson is here at the deck with us. You know, she's the co-producer of the show. Very rarely shows her face in the show. But today, she says, I'm with it. So here we are. Fawn, welcome. Let the audience know this is Fawn Aberson, my co-producer of the Black Beat Podcast. Here she is today, and I appreciate you coming on the show. But this show is kind of really fascinating and interesting, and I'll take a little bit of time before I turn it over to Fawn for a second to introduce our guest. You know, most of us in the beginning of each year tend to take on these challenges of each year. You know, it's what do they call those? The thing people they go into these
the
New Year's
resolutions.
Yeah, that's that one. Yeah, I figured you would remember that one. The resolution.
I'm here to help.
You know, yeah. Well, who? The handicap? We got Jap. You know, but you know, we go into the new year each year and we go, well, I'm gonna lose some weight. I'm gonna make more money. I'm gonna get my spirit right. And I'm gonna do a whole lot of things. Family. I'm gonna build my house next year. I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna do that. And so we make these resolutions, but you know, I always find it very interesting as to what resolutions really make a difference. You know, when I set course in the beginning of the year, and I sort of set my trajectory onto delivering an outcome. And I wonder if it's money that I should be concentrating on the first thing. Is it family I should be concentrating on as one of my New Year's resolutions or is it just a take on from last year? Maybe some of us have spiritual resolutions all in check and in tow. Maybe we are. So today though, Fawn is and myself are bringing you a very special guest to talk a little bit about some of these things and some of these topics. But I'm really excited about this one. Fawn, do you care to introduce our guest to us today?
Yeah, John, and thank you for putting the context of it is a new year, 2024. We're excited. You know, and I'm not always a co-host, as you said, of the Black Beat Podcast, where you're unapologetically black, so sometimes that feels awkward for me as your white co-pilot, but I do appreciate being able to
you unapologetically white.
bring that white perspective to the table when it's needed. And usually that's not needed. But, you know, I can be the sounding board. And, you know, the New Year's resolution, actually every year for the last couple of years, I've made the same New Year's resolution, and that is to read more books, right? And in fact, I'm one of the editors of Flossin Magazine, Flossin Media, which John and I run, and Black Beat is under that umbrella. And so we always have a section in the magazine called Book Remarks, right? And I got to thinking about the resolution. I was like, I wanted to read a book every month, right? I should do it every week because that would be right. But I want to make sure that I'm reading at least one book every month. And our guest today has graciously helped me find one of my first books of January, right? Her name is Amber Ontiveros. She's the principal owner of a management firm called Ontiveros and Associates, and she is the author of a new book called Heal the Four Woundings.
Whoa,
so
the four woundings.
we started,
Heal the four of them.
Both John and I, we started delving into the book, but Amber has an amazing career pathway. And this book is more, it touches on your career path, but it really is a self-reflection look, and we're excited to talk about that today. So welcome, Amber Ontiveros.
Well, welcome, Amber. Again, thank you for coming on to the show. And I got so many questions to ask you because, you know, coming into the new year for me, I don't know about with Fawn, but, you know, she was reading a lot of these books, and when I was looking at the titles of a lot of these books, most of them said, more money, more money, more money, you know. But, you know, for me, I sort of wanted to come into this year differently than last year, and because since COVID, to me, the world done gone crazy, and and it just seems to me like, there's all these different kinds of emotions and conditions are being elicited internally for me. And so, and I don't know, but by the end of last year, I wasn't so sure if I had a grasp on certain elements of life, like the spiritual aspect of my life, because I sort of found myself getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And I noticed in your book, Amber, that some of these things you touched on, and I was really fascinated about this. So I'm really eager to sort of open this up to you and give you, because I'm trying not to bring that sense of anger and disorientation and all of these things that is occurring in our society, the politics and this money and black folks and white folks and all these kinds of things. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that stuff. And so trying to find a priority or a way to approach this year that would sort of give me a lot less stress, and a lot less anger and stuff. So, and I noticed in your book, the name of your book, Healing the Four Woundings. And somehow or another, in the last couple of years, I felt like I've been wounded somehow. And so I'm real eager to sort of open that up. So again, Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is Black Beat.
I'm excited. That's right.
Well, tell us a little bit about what prompts you to delve into this. And I want to caution our listeners today. I know we all have our opinions as to how we look at the different spiritual aspects of our lives. And so I'm going to leave that all out to y'all to interpret what this conversation means to you. But Amber, welcome to the show again, and let's get into this.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what prompted you to write this book.
Well, so honestly, John, this book is it's both a love story and a comedy. It's a
sounds like God.
That's right. So for the listeners, so by way of background. So I'm an expert in discrimination. I worked here locally for many years. I worked for the Honorable Margaret Carter. Then I worked for the head of TriMet, the transit agency.
Senator Margaret Carter.
Yeah, I love Margaret.
Yeah.
I've worked
She's
in...
an institution.
She is. Yeah. And I've worked in the Black community for, 15 years. The Black community is my heart. And then I worked for TriMet, and I did policy, creating minority contracting programs, and then I went and worked for the Bush administration and the Obama administration.
The Bush and the Obama.
Yep.
Oh, God.
So I have a very unique background.
A wide perspective. Sure.
Yeah. And so not only did I write federal civil rights laws, but I also investigated agencies for discrimination. I'm an expert in discrimination.
Wow.
And so
For some reason, I wanted to go dum da dum dum. I don't know why.
Here's the dump da dump dum. Here's the dump da dump dum. So I left the administration in 2014, and I had started my business, and I have a rare disease. So this book is a very vulnerable expression of my experience so that we can see ourselves. And what happened was in 2016, I had a near-death experience. And what happened was I was in my bed one moment, and I felt funny, and I was shaking. And the next thing I knew, the me, that will always be me, popped outside of my body and floated through the ceiling. And in the next moment, I was an expanse of blackness. And it felt so good. And as I was there was a pinprick of light. And it called me. And it sucked me into it like a vacuum cleaner at supersonic speed. And the next thing I knew, I was in an expanse of eternal light. And in that eternal light, I was in the presence of a being that I knew. And it's not really a knowing, it's a remembering. Because when you are not in the body, you are part of the all. And in that moment, I was like, oh yeah, I remember you, the infinite creator. And there were so many expressions of information that were flowing to me from the being of light. And I call the being of light the infinite creator because I knew it is infinite and there is nothing beyond its creation. And so information was passed through me telepathically. And for those of you that may be non-believers, that's okay. Consider this: when you pick up your phone and receive a call, you're getting information via fiber optics, via light. And I could go into a long conversation about the science behind this, because then what happened was I had what I guess is called a life review. And I experienced every experience I had ever had in my lifetime before that near-death experience. But I had the life review as though I was all the people I met. And I felt the experience as though I was them, which meant I felt all the good that I had created. And I also felt all the bad that I had created. And it was the most magnificent, wonderful thing that I can describe. And after I came back from that experience, so I wasn't allowed to stay. One thing that was given to me by
They kick you out the hotel?
Yeah, they did. They did.
Or the light.
Or he did. It did. Was I was given a gift and I didn't know what it was, and the gift was called Awakening Grace. And the tools in my book are actually those tools that had been given to me after that near-death experience that enabled me to heal the 4 woundings. And this book is really about taking control of your life. And one thing that I learned in that experience with the infinite creator was the reason why I call it a comedy and it's a love story is because the infinite creator's like, oh, no, baby. You think that you are better than the man who is angry over Black Lives Matter. Oh, no, honey. You have those same oppressive thoughts within you. And after I came back, I started studying quantum mechanics and consciousness, and then I studied the neuroscience of unconscious bias. And through that, I was then led to create a variety of teachings that were given to me by angelic beings that are documented in the book. And the 4 woundings are the 4 woundings that I now absolutely believe and absolutely know are what is causing discord as well as discrimination. And this might be or seem controversial, but I do not believe now that racism, it has anything to do with race. It has to do with some of these mechanisms that we are going to talk about.
Yeah, we sure is. I couldn't help but to begin my black thoughts when I was listening to Amber speak, And I think that's part of the challenge for me. Growing up in the Baptist church, being baptized as a Presbyterian, going through Pentecostal and all those things, we tend to approach at least I did historically in my family and my background, my community, we tend to approach some of these topics, from a different angle. And so whenever I start hearing someone speak esoterically, it begins to make me start thinking, well, all kinds of other things other than the thought of God, for example, right? Is this a thought of God? Are they talking about God, or they talk about voodoo, or what are they talking? What is she talking about? Well, and so, I will agree that there's a number of approaches to arrive at a spiritual awakening. Would you not agree?
Yes.
And it sounds like that's one of those things that you had.
Yes.
That prompted you to write this book.
Yes.
Right? But one of the things that I noticed that really made me to continue to delve into the book a little bit was about how you described growing up and coming through your past and arriving you to some of the places in which you have arrived to, some of your experiences, and especially this issue around racism, right? And I thought that, especially that when I started thinking about that one, and as you were talking about in the book about how it was so hard for you to work through some of your growth and some of your early childhood experiences because you were constantly comparing yourself to white women.
Yes.
And so can you talk a little bit more about what that experience was like for you, and tell me a little bit more how you arrived to that place, and then what was the outcomes for you in that?
Yeah. So one of the things I describe is through this process and through understanding the neuroscience of unconscious bias, I realized what's actually happening has to do with my past and my trauma that's showing up in my present. So in my case, I did not grow up rich. First person to go to college, first person to go to graduate school. I had been raped for many years when I was younger. All of those experiences result in trauma. And what the neuroscience says is there are two biases that are in our unconscious mind that we don't know the beliefs that lie in our unconscious mind that exist, that are resulting in another part of the brain that holds you hostage to those beliefs that lie in your unconscious mind.
I'll talk about it.
And so what's actually happening is that you're seeing something in a moment where you're triggered. There's a false belief that you're seeing about that experience in yourself. So let me give you an example. This is how I discovered it. So I had been using a technique, it's called mindful listening, and it's where you, in the moment where you're in a hostile situation or you're triggered, you focus on the breath. Nobody needs to know that you're doing this. You focus on your breath, you think in as you breathe in, you think out as you breathe out. And you ask yourself a set of questions, because what you're trying to do in that moment is you're trying to understand your own bias and you're trying to understand the bias of others. Because if they're being a butthead, they're being a butthead because they're actually playing out their conditioning. If you get angry, so are you. And so I will give you an example. So, I help agencies change. So people will hire me. They'll say, we want the best, most innovative contracting program in the country. They'll hire me. I'll be like, great. So I'll create it. And then what will happen is I'll get crickets. You get
a grasshopper.
I get grasshoppers. I get grasshoppers. Or they'll change it so that it speaks to them. Okay, so
style shifting is what you're saying.
Yes. So at some point I began to think there's something wrong with me. And as I was using this tool, on myself while I was watching a white man get really pissed off over the Black Lives Matter movement. So I was using this tool on myself so that I could manage myself, understand what is really happening within me at this moment, and so that I could see him. And so he was really angry over the Black Lives Matter movement. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. What I realized was what he was really saying is, if Black Lives Matter, I don't matter. And that's based on a false belief that he has about himself, that he is not worthy. And that is the same belief that I had about myself. And then as I kept using this tool, I realized there are 4 woundings. I call them woundings because they're really as a result of past trauma that is resulting in specific beliefs in your mind that you don't know what the heck they are there, that are replaying in your mind in the moment, that are then resulting in those beliefs coming up that are then resulting in your behavior.
I can so get behind that. I really can. I mean, because sometimes the subconscious mind carries thoughts that are not so affirming about ourselves.
That's right.
And I think that one of the things that I really am appreciating you are addressing is trauma, the trauma orientation, at least for my people. When I look at the work that I've done over the years clinically and working with developing programs and all those types of things, one of the things that I realized that, we could constantly always be throwing money at stuff. We tend to think that that's our ready fix, And yeah, sometimes it's okay to have problems with money. You can have problems. It's better to have problems with money, most people would say. But I still believe a problem is a problem, and it still has the anchor and the shackle to your subconscious belief about who you are in terms of your worthiness and your capacity or capability. And I think that is some of the things that plague a lot of the indigenous people and or people of color in this country, when it comes to
She wasn't talking about an indigenous person that was having a problem. She was talking about a white man that was having a problem with himself. So again, I think it goes back to, what we discussed about her book, Heal the 4 Woundings, was that it was, she comes out the gate in chapter 1, and you did a beautiful job of setting the tone with the outer body experience. And when John and I were reading, we were driving and I was reading it out loud, and we were like, ooh, she came out the gate just like
boom,
on some transcending, amazing, things. And we were kind of like, where is this going? But it was really, what we quickly began to understand, that it was a self-awareness, self-assessment kind of thing that you were coming out of the gate first. And so when you're talking about the 4 woundings, I'd love to know, what are the 4 woundings, Amber? And with regards to that anger that, John and we talked about it, so much of our response to things are external, right? We tend to go external first and internal second, if at all. So Amber, how did your experience, your lived experience, your professional experience, and then your outer body experience that sort of gotten you to this awakening, get you to really be in touch with your internal response versus your external response first, and how do you teach that to others?
Right. Yeah, that is literally the heart of the question. So before I had my, I can honestly say, because this is why this book is a comedy. I'm an expert in discrimination, and I have these very oppressive thoughts, and I didn't know it. If I had not had my near-death experience and I hadn't been guided to find these things, I never would have healed these dang beliefs that have been holding me back. And so one of the things you talked about, white male, women, people of color, the thing that I realized is that these 4 woundings lie in all of us.
That's my point. Trauma is trauma.
Trauma is trauma. In my case, my trauma is like rape. I was adopted. Adoptive results in, making you think that you're unworthy when it has nothing to do with that whatsoever. But the thing that I realized is through these techniques that were given to me through the infinite creator and the angelic beings, right, is that we have been conditioned to believe some of the beliefs that are resulting in the discord. I honestly believe that
we're on autopilot.
we are on autopilot. And the part of the brain that is the autopilot, and I describe it in the book, it's called the reticular activation system.
Ooh, I don't like it.
It's called...
Why? Because it's reticular?
Call it the RAS. And here's how it works. So when you first start driving, you're all paying attention. You're paying attention to how to get there. You're focused on everything, and then you notice that you get to the location. 5 years down the line, you have your baby in the back seat, and then all of a sudden you notice, I got to work, but you have no idea how you got there. You paid attention to the baby that's crying in the back seat, but not how you got there. That is the brain on autopilot, which is these beliefs literally run your life like a program. So these beliefs in the unconscious mind create your thoughts, your emotions, and then your behavior. But if you don't know what your beliefs are, it controls your behavior. So here's the 4 woundings.
Okay. Here's what we've been waiting for.
Okay.
Well, belief clarifications were already there, but we get it.
So imagine you are seeing 2 women. One is discriminating against another woman. Why is she doing that? She's doing that because she believes the belief that there's only room for one at the top. And so what she's doing is, here are the 4 woundings, and I'm going to say them, and then I'm going to tell you how it plays out.
Okay.
The first one is, I am not enough. The second one is, I am not worthy. The third one is, I have to win. The fourth one is, I don't have enough. So if you think about it from a past trauma, every one of those past traumas can show up in your existing present moment experience without you knowing it, that can make you believe that belief. Okay, so here's how it works. So a woman sees another woman and she's like, wow, you have this amazing skill. Damn, I'm scared. I'm scared because I don't have that skill. And I'm scared because I'm thinking I'm not enough. I'm not enough compared to what? That means you're comparing yourself to the other woman. And then she's saying, oh my gosh, you have the skill. I don't have that skill. There's only room for one person at the top. I'm not worthy. Oh my gosh, if I'm not worthy, and I want a job because in the past I didn't have enough resources, I have to deny you access to a something because I have to win.
Well, and it's so funny because I every once in a while I listen to some stuff on some of those paid radio stations, and one of the jocks on the station made a statement about capitalism, and that the very nature of capitalism in its nature is very destructive. And but I captured what you was just saying, and there was a statement or a couple words you said in the beginning of your book, and one was, you are worthy, you are enough, you don't have to win, and you have enough. And it's so amazing because that the heavy hitting come out the gate. I mean, and now in terms of what I'm hearing you say in relationships to that is that somehow or another, I run through these things, is that how does a society of people, Amber, get beyond this question of enough when you have a society constantly telling a certain sector of its people that it's not, that it reinforces constantly that demographic or those people are just not enough or not enough. I mean, being black in America is a message that's constantly coming down to me from white America, that, especially since the Trump campaign, the Trump aspect of it, that somehow or another insinuates, and maybe it's buried in me somewhere or whatever that is, but
it's
programmed in the thought that says every time, just like they do whistle calls for whites to get, or any other type of political reality to come into compliance, there is also a whistle call that triggers the messaging in us that is a trauma-based
That's
oriented
right.
message that basically says you're not enough.
That's right. That's right. So let me give you an example of someone that was threatened by me. And it took me a few months to use these techniques so that I could understand what was happening and so that I could dissolve the energy and the situation between this individual and I. We were working on a team, on a project as a consulting team. And so this individual saw something in me that scared him, and so therefore he was threatened. And so, his behavior was not great. And so, but the thing that I noticed is that I was angry and I was traumatized. And then as I used these tools, I realized what was actually happening. What was actually happening, and this answers your question, John. What was actually happening is this. He was saying to me, "Oh, Amber, I want to be you. There's something I see in you that I don't have in me, and I want that." And I realized when I get angry, I'm saying, "I believe you." I realized I had internalized discrimination to the point that I fucking believed it. And when I got angry, what I was really saying is, I agree with you when you put me down, and I believe that I'm not worthy. What this does is it changes your mindset so that you can change those limiting beliefs that are holding us back. Because one thing that you both brought up, that when you do this, it changes everything about what you see, which is, you talked about this, Fawn, about bringing the white perspective, and you talked about bringing the black perspective. These 4 woundings are wounds that are in all of us, and they're making you think that way, and they're making you think that way, because these are all wounds that we all have, and they're making us fight amongst each other rather than coming from a place of compassion.
But what happened when I got that part of it? Yeah, I look at Fawn most of the time, and I listen to her talk and all that, and I start listening to.
See, you think like a white person.
Yeah, exactly.
Is
And,
what you'll
and
say
then you look over here,
sometimes.
well, you think too black, and but I think there's even more when I look at this part of it. How do we begin to heal this? What are does your book begin to help us begin to navigate those difficult waters to somehow or another arrive at some type of I'm okay and you're okay and we're both okay?
And how do we begin to heal? And why do you consider it healing and wounds?
Yes, that's a very good question. So these are unconscious biases. Let's be clear. These are unconscious biases, but I call them woundings because biases are intellectual stuff. Woundings are about pain and trauma, and this is about the heart. And this is about through healing, you can then open your heart for love. And the thing is, there are some teachings in the first chapter, specific teachings that the Infinite Creator had given me. And one of them is hurt people. And you cannot give what you don't have. And who we really are as beings is we are love. We are love. That is who we really are. But we have been conditioned to believe these false beliefs, to compete with each other, to hurt other beings. That is what has been conditioned and programmed in our mind, and it's not real.
And I really don't mean to interrupt you, but when I hear that kind of stuff, this is really funny. I don't know if it's funny or not. But when I hear someone speak so delicately about my pain and about the navigation and the things that I need, the ways that I need to navigate to get beyond it, I start saying bullshit, for some odd reason. It's like a resistance,
Yes.
An internal resistance. I want to be invested in my misery or my difficulty. And I started thinking about that in relationship to black on black communications when it comes to those types of things. It's like the perception is constantly this thing that says, well, why can't black people ever come together and do anything successful? But that's not a real reality. I mean, because all over the world, black people are doing things together and doing successful things. But yet it always appears that it is we can't seem to communicate. We don't have love for one another, blah, 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 blah. We're always trying to somehow undermine those realities. How does your book help us begin to align ourselves with some kind of healthy direction in terms of dealing and addressing those things, the rhetoric that goes into self-flagellation, those types of things that create those adversarial relationships amongst ourselves and others, and rather be black on black, white on white and black, whatever that is. How do we begin to navigate that and to restore and so have some type of restorative reality associated with that in terms of your book and relationship to your book?
So it includes so many tools that I use on myself, like almost every day. And one of the things that I realized is that I had a victim consciousness. And
magic.
I did not know that I had a victim consciousness. But the Creator helped me realize you can be as small or as big as you want. And what I say in the first chapter is, you are a perfect puzzle piece. You have to be that perfect puzzle piece for the puzzle of humanity to fit together. And so the tools in the book are everything from the benefits of mindfulness. Mindfulness increases your creativity by 20%. It uses breath work to manage your emotions, to control your emotions, to understand why are you being triggered? Why is the other person being a butthead? It teaches you empowerment techniques to change your mindset, because this is all about growth mindset.
Right.
And so, like, perfectionism. Let me give you an example. We all think we're supposed to be perfect, when in actuality, mistakes are your biggest opportunities. It's your biggest opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
When someone is a racist,
I must be really growing these days.
Yes, me too.
Well, I ain't got no comment with that there. You know? I was there at that one. But the assumption, well, how do you address those people who assume they don't need to heal? They ain't got no wounds.
So yourself. How do
you
address somebody like yourself?
Well,
who are you talking to?
So I talk.
Girl, you better be careful.
Well, here's
You're on
the
my
thing.
podcast today, dog.
Here's the thing, John. I would say this to you and all the listeners. I wrote this book from a place of pain.
Yeah.
This was a place of pain. I no longer wanted to feel the place of pain, which was fear. I no longer wanted to be controlled by emotions and my thoughts. I no longer wanted that to happen. I wanted to feel good, because one of the things I had been doing is all the time I was comparing myself to beautiful white women, because white is the aesthetic of beauty. And as a result of that, I thought I was the ugliest person ever, which means I loathed myself. But the thing is once you change the way you think about yourself, you take back your power, and you're like, oh, no, you're beautiful, Miss White Thing. And here's the thing, Mr. So-and-so, it's okay if you don't like me. Thank you for getting out of the way for the one that will.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to put you down, Miss Beautiful White Woman, because I know I'm badass all by myself.
That's right. Yes.
Well, y'all badass by yourselves, but I'm trying to figure out how to get my badass on to the next level,
John,
of relief in terms of all this. Like, here, one last thing, and hold your thought on that one. No, I mean for me, on this, along this line, this whole notion. Well, let me ask you this, because out of mostly all the books that I've reviewed that is in this type of genre and healing books and these types of things, they seem to all have a beginning rooted in some type of pain. okay, digging myself out of darkness,
Yes.
moving to the
Yes,
light,
yes,
toward light,
yes.
right? And so, and in your mind, in your interpretation, is that a necessary evil to be able to arrive to a place called consciousness? Or do we have to sort of travel the pain route to get here in order to open that sixth eye, that sixth sense to, or is it multiple
Yeah.
ways of arriving to this level of consciousness?
So, Dr. King had it right. Darkness does not drive out darkness.
Exactly.
Only light can do that.
Yeah.
And
upright back can't be ridden.
That's right.
Mm.
And so, what awakening grace means?
That's what he said.
Awakening grace means to turn within, to be aware of darkness, loathing, bias, basically your shadow, the darkness within you. Grace, to transform that darkness into light, compassion, forgiveness, and loving kindness for self. Because if you really understand the way this works, is this: darkness is the key. In my case, I had a lot of darkness. I loathed myself. I hated myself because I believed the beliefs and I didn't know that I even did that. Darkness is the key because by turning and looking at your darkness, you are then transforming, because you're sitting in awareness of your darkness that then allows you to transform that into light. Now, why do you want to do that? Let's go back to the RAS filter. What you believe will show up in your experience, right? So if you, let's say you want to see, let's say you're really into red Jeeps. Then all of a sudden you start seeing red Jeeps everywhere.
Deer. I've done this before with deer.
Yeah. So you start seeing them everywhere. So you're by changing your internal state, you will then start experiencing that in your external world, because your RAS filter changes what you then experience in your senses.
Yeah, Amber, and it's really is like mastering your mind.
It is
to
mastering
some
your
degree,
mind.
But then you take it a step forward, in your work, right? Because there's difficult work out there, right? There, as you said, the guy who was really angry about the Black Lives Matter movement. And from your book, what I understand is you're not looking at him being kind of a jerk for not getting it or really projecting your ideology on it, but you're going internal and saying, I have dark thoughts about subject matters as well.
Yes.
Maybe not this one, but I have dark thoughts about subject matters. And so before you respond, or I'm not sure how you heal a whole group or transition a group, and I'd like to talk about that, but I get that you're saying self-awareness first. I can understand people and how they think dark thoughts. I have dark thoughts. And when I have dark thoughts, that's my time to do internal work and get back into the driver's seat of seat of my brain and be not on autopilot and say, that's a dark thought for me. I must react with it, with unworthiness or, there's not enough or I have to win this and stuff like that. So that's a lot to filter into yourself, right? And then participate in the outer world. So as John's alluding to, there are things that make all day around us make people angry. We're all in a capitalist society. We subscribe to the fact that we've got to fight every day in our business, or the Palestine-Israel conflict, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, the China-United
the white-black
States
conflict right here. Yeah.
Now when it's one thing to kind of hear you in a room like this and it feels good, right? And it's like, I like it. I think I can, we know it's a daily practice. It's not an overnight thing.
Correct.
So, and maybe why you wrote this book, it's part of your practice and then to practice it daily. But how can we take a practice like this and impact something so large of issues that you're trying to solve when you're working with corporations or governments or things like that? How can you make a change? how do you do that? Are you working with individuals? Are you working with group? How are you impacting that, do you think?
Yeah.
So, and I'm hearing something really clearly out of this as the first step. Now, you might be wanting Amber to answer that question, but there were some things that I did recognize were some of the first steps. And one of those steps that I clearly keep hearing is self-assessment.
Yes.
Is the beginning sort of road sign that you can tell that you're starting on the road.
Yes.
Right? Tell us more now. And also what I'm hearing here is for any kind of really growth beyond stuck, okay, is that the conversation that I'm hearing is about preparing the soil, okay, for a healthy seed to grow. And that's all that self-discovery, all that stuff that binds you.
Yes.
Right? So take it from there for me. And I think that your question, Fawn, was significant in relationship to that. But
Thank you, John.
Well, no, I'm just trying to really.
I feel worthy of my question.
Well, I didn't.
I'm doing the work right now.
Well,
I'm breathing in and out at you.
Okay, and that's where that white-black thing comes in right about now. Is that condescending ass stuff that we talk about, right?
Yeah.
But
see,
no, I'm just kidding.
Already, Amber, help us. We need help.
Yeah. But go ahead, Amber. I mean, I do think the self-assessment part for me was really the key and significance of what I'm
Right.
hearing so far as one of the.
So, Amber, those were two
steps toward it,
questions
yeah.
John reflected, but I would like to know your thoughts on the large picture question, too.
Okay. John, say your two questions again.
The original, one of the, because when we hear things like this, the question for me is mostly, well, how do I get started? What do I know that is the first step? What am I
What's my
picking up here?
toolbox?
Yeah, and so most of the stuff that I've read, most of my experience over life, when we talk about the spiritual walk and those things, and I'm sure religion has a different interpretation or may not in terms of how that may look.
So
But
your question.
my question is what I'm hearing is self-assessment is the first thing, is one of the first road markers on a skill set that we should begin to adopt, right, in the spiritual development of our lives. And then the other thing is I'm hearing is that once we begin that self-discovery, we're just preparing the soil to move to the next level of engagement.
Yes.
And then what is the belief that we have of what that engagement should look like?
Okay. So, yes, it's all about, this entire book is about self-assessment. It's about the individual taking their control back through a variety of techniques that, I've talked about. But then through that technique that you use on yourself, you then can see the white man who's angry over Black Lives Matter. He's angry, but it has nothing to do with race. It actually has to do with his self-esteem, and it has to do with past trauma. Because there are these two biases that I talk about in the book. One of them is called the self-serving bias, and the way it works is that if good things happen to me, I attribute them to myself. If bad things happen to me, I attribute them to things outside of me.
Yeah,
But
she's sitting there at the table. No.
The problem with that, it doesn't allow you to make mistakes, because it could be the case that you applied for a job and you didn't get the job because maybe you didn't accurately analyze the position such that you created your resume to accurately address it.
And not, they hate me.
Exactly. So, by using these techniques on yourself, you then can see the situation accurately, because then you're not working in your unconscious. You're conscious of the situation. You can actually see it, and then you can choose how you want to react and which direction you want to go. So I started by saying this is a love story too, because it's a love story because the infinite creator's like, oh no, why do they make mistakes? They make mistakes because they're unconscious. So what's really happening is we make decisions from our unconscious, from our past. We don't even know we're making those decisions. Something in our past is resulting right now that I'm in a state of fear, or a something that is then resulting in my behavior. But it's happening so quickly because your brain is a neuroadaptive processor that is taking this situation, taking past facts, applying it to it so quickly you don't even know it. Now, I personally do not want to be controlled by my rape from the past. I want to make my own core decisions about the situation right now. And if the guy over there doesn't like me because I got a big booty, thank you very much. Get out the way. Clients don't want to work with me. Oh, thank you so much. Now I get to work with the one that will love me. Mr. Racist. I have only compassion for you because now you don't get to know me.
Woo! Boy, I tell you, we can't stop here, but we're going to stop here for a minute. Listen here, Amber, this topic has always been really near and dear to my heart. And, you know, this whole dialogue around spiritual development, the human side of spiritual development. And even when I say it that way, I'm sure it's bigger. It's non-living and non-human and non-human living things and human living things. We all have that intersection when it comes to spiritual development. And so one of the things that I'm really happy about this year is that what comes first, the horse or the cart? And for me, I think the foundational piece for any human development is really the conversation around spiritual development and becoming more aware of our around
Self-awareness.
Step one, you know, who am I in relationship to my experiences? You know, and what do I bring to the table in relationship to those things? And so I'm really glad to refocus myself this year, and reading your book has assisted me in doing that. Is allowing me to sort of prioritize, is money more important than my wellness and my ability to engage in my life in a meaningful, harmonious way? And those things are really significant, have become more and more significant to me. And in reading your book, I'm starting to see how just the simplicity of this, to some degree, for some people it's not as simplistic, but for me, the simplicity of my life experience and being able to adopt my life experience to your book made it kind of a little bit easier read for me than with most people.
So, Amber, can you hold up the book jacket, the cover jacket, and then just kind of go through it again, tell people the name of your book, where they can find it, how they can find out more about you and your work as well?
Sure. So the book is called Heal the Four Woundings, A Guide to End Discord and Discrimination. And you can go to my website, which is www.healthefourwoundings.com, and that is with an S. And I guess I would.
And then you can purchase the book there.
Yeah, you can purchase the book on Amazon
and
find out more about me.
Okay.
And the other thing is, so this is a consciousness book. Let's be clear. But the angelic beings helped me write it in a way that is easy for all of us normal people to understand. But the thing is, I just want to remind the listener about who you are. You are a spark of God, of the consciousness. You are literally a fractal of the consciousness of God. That is what actually lives within you. To change your external world, you have to change the internal consciousness so the external reflects
manifestation.
That's right.
This is a reflection of your inner self
in your outer world.
This is a manifestation book. Yeah. And the reason I know that the Creator picked me is because this is a love story about you.
Whoa. This is a love story
It's
about.
A great way to start off 2024.
Hey, look here. I could always use me a good love story.
A good book.
Hey, yo, we appreciate you. Hey, this is Black Beat Podcast coming at you this year, 2024. Flossing's 20th year anniversary. Let me tell y'all something. Y'all think this content is interesting? Stay tuned. We're going to keep on traveling along this road here, and we're going to have Amber back again as our guest. And hopefully Miss Aberson will decide she want to sit and be a part of this dialogue if we don't have to go to war at the table here, this. But Amber is helping us mediate this by self-assessment. What do we bring to the table? But anyway, this has been really exciting, Amber, and we really appreciate you coming in and being a part of this.
Thank you.
And hey, y'all, respect. Hey, if you ain't did it in 2023, look forward to doing it in 2024. Okay, so we opening the door to some exciting things. So come on with us in Part A. Okay, so anyway, thank y'all. Y'all have a nice afternoon, and we appreciate you, huh?